Well, Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez have introduced a bill that would cap credit card and payday loan interest at 15% a year. The only obvious question is, why didn't Republicans introduce this bill? It's not that their voters are against it. They're totally for it. A new poll by Business Insider finds that 70% of both parties support this proposal. So is there any reason not to pass it right now? Thomas Vartanian is a professor at George Mason's Antonin Scalia Law School. He's executive director of the school's program of financial regulation and technology, right in the middle of this issue all the time. So we're grateful that he can join us tonight. Professor, thanks very much for coming on.
Great to be here, Tucker.
So why do you think 70% of Republicans would support this?
You know, I don't know, because history is replete with problems that have occurred from rate controls and tinkering with pieces of the market, because it forces certain things to happen in other parts of the market.
Yes.
So, for example, we put a 15% rate control on. There's no doubt that consumers deserve the best services they can get at the fairest price. But when you put a rate control on, what you're effectively doing is shrinking the credit pool, and guess who gets kicked out of that credit pool when it gets smaller? The people who need the credit the most. So that's the problem with
well, that I agree. I mean, I certainly agree with you that there are always unintended consequences to these things, and you can't tamper in markets without changing outcomes you didn't intend to change. No question about that. But credit card debt in the United States is $1 trillion. The average family with credit card debt owes $15,000, and they're paying an average of 21% interest on that. That's a disaster. So why would it make us sad to stop that?
Well, the problem is that not everybody's paying 21%. 21% is the median,
right.
And that's a little bit deceptive. All right. If you go online today, you can find credit cards at 8.5%. You can find credit cards being offered by hundreds of different credit card companies. So you can't argue that the market's not competitive.
You can also find them at 36%. But the point is, the median is still 21, which is
right.
multiples, many multiples of what you could borrow money from a bank for. For whatever reason, this is working. That for the banks, that's why they made $178 billion in interest and fees last year on it. So why would it be bad to reduce the outstanding credit card debt in the country?
The reason it would be bad is because it would take away credit from the people who need it the most. It's not the way to go after that problem. I think there are other better ways of dealing with that problem. But when you shrink the credit base, the people with the lowest credit ratings and the worst credit history are going to lose their access to credit. Bobby Kennedy wrote a letter in 1964 to the New York State legislator after he had done all that work investigating organized crime, and he asked them to eliminate usury rates in New York because it was the one thing that was forcing people to go to loan sharks, because they couldn't get legitimate credit.
I think that's probably right, but in 1960 or whenever, there's no doubt that Americans were less in debt, less enslaved by debt than they are now. And so why is it bad to say maybe we should all try, rich and poor among us, to live within our own means a little bit? And going into debt is actually not freedom. It's the opposite of freedom. Why wouldn't we say that?
That is absolutely correct. Americans are in too much debt. There's no doubt about it. But the way to go about dealing with that debt is through financial literacy. The financial literacy rate in this country is abominably abysmal.
Really? So if you're paying 391% interest, that's the average interest on payday loans, okay? You don't need to be financially literate to know you're getting totally shafted, and yet millions of people do that anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's...
So why wouldn't you stop that? I mean, people are really being abused and taken advantage of.
Yeah, well, look, I think the abuses need to be taken care of, but we're not talking about abuses here in terms of this 15% limitation. You're talking about changing the markets in the country dramatically.
Yeah, I am.
Right, and so the abuses need to be dealt with, but you don't deal with an abuse by capping everybody's interest rate and saying to everybody who is following the law, who is dealing with their customers fairly, we're going to put you in a bind, because when you put them in a bind, they're going to put their customers in a bind.
Yeah, I would do it anyway. Just like I wouldn't let people sell their kidneys or their children into slavery.
The last time we did something like that, it caused a savings and loan crisis. So I think when you tinker with the market, you have to be ready for the consequences.
Right. Well, this would be one good consequence. Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.